While variability is great for helping swimmers learn, is it possible to write sets that are just too busy? If so, when do you get to that point? Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. A coach recently asked me to take a look at a set he'd written for some feedback. His observation was that the swimmers were a little bit too confused because there was a lot going on. So the question then becomes, what's the optimal amount of variability? How do you know what's optimal for your swimmers? And how can you help your swimmers learn to handle more variability over time? That's what we're going to dive into today. If swimmers just do the same thing over and over again, they're not going to make progress. Repetition is important, but that repetition needs to be varied over time rather than just repeating the same thing. You can change the activity you're having them do, for instance, changing from freestyle to underwater kicking, or from freestyle to a certain drill that you like for freestyle. You can change the speeds, fast, slow, everything between. You can change the stroke count. You can change the stroke rate. You can use different training aids. You can have them swim over different distances. You can change the amount of fatigue they're experiencing. You can have them use different hand postures like closed fist or OK signs. There are tons of different ways to add variability to the same basic activity and continue to work on the same skill. By using different variations of the same basic goal, you can help swimmers figure out exactly what they need to do to be successful. And by changing what they're doing within a workout or within a set, they're going to learn more and they're going to learn faster. For instance, if a swimmer is working on moving more water with their upper body in freestyle, they'll learn more if they do some with resistance and some without resistance. If they do it with a buoy, without a buoy, if they do it with stroke counts and a range of stroke counts, or they could use different hand postures, or they could change the speed. By adding different variations, they'll have to solve more problems than if they just do the same thing over and over. Doing things differently is really powerful when trying to develop skills. It's a great way to help swimmers learn. So, how much variability is appropriate? The simple answer is enough, but not too much. So what does that actually mean? The more skilled they are, the more variation they're going to need because they tend to swim the same exact way all the time. They don't make many mistakes relative to what they're used to, so they need more variation to help them feel new skills. They need a powerful push to get them to change, and variation can help them do that. If they swim 4 100s freestyle, each 100 freestyle is going to look pretty similar. The other end of the spectrum, novice swimmers or beginning swimmers tend not to need very much variation because their swimming tends to have a lot of variability built into it. They're still learning the basics and they're going to be making tons of mistakes. And they don't have very much control over how they swim, so they're going to swim differently almost every lap. Those same 4 100s freestyle are going to look very different each lap and each repetition. So these swimmers already have a ton of variability built into what they're doing. This also applies to specific skills and specific activities. The more practice they've had with a skill, the better they are at it, the more variation they're going to need, and the opposite is true as well. If it's a new skill, they haven't practiced it very much, they're going to need more variability. So let's say you're introducing paddle cap freestyle to your swimmers, and you're having them swim with a paddle on their head, and you're making sure that the paddle stays on when they swim. If they've never done it before, they're going to make a lot of mistakes as they try to figure it out. So the variability is already there. However, if they have a lot of experience with that drill and they can execute it consistently and reliably, just swimming it isn't going to help them learn much. Now you need to start adding variability, whether that's speed, whether that's stroke count, or any of the other options we've discussed. That's going to help them continue to learn, and the more they learn, the more you're going to need to continue to switch it up. The better skilled they are, the more variability they need. The less skilled they are, the less variability they need. That applies in general to their overall skill set in swimming, but also specifically in terms of the skill that you're working on or the activity you've introduced. So when you're not sure how much variability to use, that's the general framework to start to figure out and answer that question. Now, how do you know what's appropriate for your swimmers? And that could be your swimmers as a group or your swimmers as individuals. So while the group may have a general ability level, there's going to be some variation within that group. The simple answer is that you have to watch. What you're looking for is that you want them to be challenged, but you want them to be successful. So if it's obviously not a challenge to your swimmers, going back to the paddle cap freestyle, if they can do it with no problem, then you need to up the variability. You need to challenge them in order to help them continue to improve. On the other hand, if they've really struggled to execute it well, it's probably too much. You're asking too much of them, there's too much change, they need a simpler version so that they can be successful. There's no right or wrong answer, you just have to read your swimmers. If there's frustration and confusion, it's too much variability. If there's boredom, it's probably not enough variability. Just like with every other aspect of writing a set, it's all about finding the sweet spot. And it's not just about challenging their skills either. It's also about their attention and their ability to focus well. Swimmers are going to have different capacities to focus and pay attention to what they're doing. Some swimmers can quickly and easily switch their focus, and others can't. It doesn't have anything to do with swimming ability or intelligence necessarily, it's just something that differs between swimmers. And those swimmers can get really frustrated when there's too much to remember, and we want them focused on what they have to do, not being focused on trying to remember what they need to do next. A lot of times it's a matter of ensuring that their ability to focus isn't exceeded beyond what they can do, beyond what they can handle to execute skills well. They may have the skill, but they lack the ability to focus on the task at hand while still remembering what they need to do next. In that case, you're going to have to simplify things a little bit. Regardless if it's a skill problem or if it's a focus problem, meet them where they're at, let them be successful, and once they're successful, then you can increase the challenge. Which brings us to our next question, which is how do you help swimmers get better at managing and handling variability within a practice? The keys are simple: patience and progression. Start with something really simple that they can be successful with early in the season. Then add another component to what you're doing. Once they're consistent, they're able to execute that well, then you add another component. And then the process just continues over the course of a season. It may take days, it may take weeks, and for some swimmers it may take months to handle a lot of different change. It is what it is, and you're just trying to build the skill over time. Everyone can improve, and everyone can get better. Using the paddle cap freestyle example, you just start out using that drill. Then you can add different breathing patterns. Then you can add speed expectations. Then you can add stroke count expectations. Then you can start performing the drill with different training aids like buoy or fins, and then on and on. You're slowly adding more to the challenge, watching how they respond, and adjusting accordingly. And for some individuals, you may have to make the task a little bit simpler. And this tends to be the swimmers that struggle with focus more than anything else. For those individuals, rather than getting frustrated, either adjust the task or help them out and provide them with little reminders along the way so that they can focus on what they need to do rather than having to worry about what they need to do later. And just like anything, they can all improve still. Even in this area, you just have to help them along. So variability is key for learning, as different tends to drive better. However, it's going to be an optimal amount of variability that's key. And the only way to really figure out what's going to be optimal is to try something and watch what happens. You want them to be challenged and you want them to be relatively successful rather than overwhelmed. That's the sweet spot, and you just have to keep making adjustments to make sure you stay there. The easiest and fastest way to get there is to start with something really simple and then slowly add variability until you get to the point where they're challenged optimally. Hope that was helpful, and as always, keep it simple.